you were created to not have to chase after money, not have to work 40 hours a week just to make enough money to support you having to go back to work another 40 hours a week. And that's initially how we were designed. We were designed to live in a world without lack. Could you take us to the garden? What did the garden look like? The original design for humanity to live in.
You're talking about Adam and Eve?
Adam and Eve.
In the Garden of Eden?
The Garden of Eden. Everybody knows the Garden of Eden.
Yeah, the Garden of Eden was designed so whatever you need, it was in reach. So tree, food,
yep,
everything, and there was no lack in the garden.
Yeah.
So the garden was designed that every need was met, and
they
things
weren't planting
were
the
within
trees,
reach.
right?
No,
humans weren't planting the trees or the fruit, or they were just
reaping.
I'm hungry.
Yeah,
I'm eating.
They were harvesting. It was plenty. So that was paradise. That's why people call it paradise.
Yeah, and it wasn't just food. It was all resources.
Yes.
All the resources that we chase after in the world, and the environment was perfect, and the atmosphere was perfect, and no pain, no disease, no sickness, none of that stuff.
Yeah.
Now, we don't live in that.
We don't. Unfortunately, we don't. And because of the fall,
right,
or Adam and Eve sinning, then what was pronounced on man that he would work. Now he would work by the sweat of his brow. Not that he didn't work before, but before the work was ordained, it was orchestrated and was all in flow. Now
it wasn't to live and survive.
No,
it was
for purpose.
Yeah, it was the kind of work you do that you want to do.
Yeah.
Not the kind of work that you do that you have to do because
Yeah.
you have to eat. You have to get, you have to get provision. You have to chase after money. So this concept of living without lack, so we all innately feel that, at least everyone I've ever met, innately feels that I shouldn't have to be striving. I shouldn't have to be struggling. I shouldn't have to be living paycheck to paycheck. But the majority of Americans are living paycheck to paycheck, and we're in one of the wealthiest countries in the world. And even in America, there's that struggle of, even in the land of opportunity, there's that struggle of striving and living and surviving rather than thriving and going after your purpose with unlimited resources. So what can we do about it? Are we just doomed? Are we just doomed?
I hope not. I think it's a great question, though. And we answer that question many, many times on this podcast with, what do you value?
Right.
And I wonder if the striving comes because we've chosen to go after things that we not necessarily value, but that we think society is impressed upon us, or what we feel is culturally acceptable, or what we must have, versus what we really value. And I think sometimes that puts us in a situation where we're overloaded with striving and stress and work, instead of leaning into what we really value.
So, oh wow, that's good. So there's something we can do to kind of alleviate that burden of that paycheck to paycheck. And one thing you mentioned was stop buying stuff you don't even want or need, essentially, to break that down. Stop living out of other people's values or in values that society is impressing upon us, but instead take a inventory of what you actually value and basically build your spending around that. So, like, for example, something that's really popular is people living out of vans and turning these little vans into these miniature homes because they value freedom, travel, and it doesn't require as much money to live in that way, right? So they're meeting their values, and their money is significantly, they don't need as much money. They don't have to buy a $250,000 house. They don't have to buy another car because their van is their car. They could work a remote job from anywhere, and So that would be an example, I'd
Sure.
imagine, of figuring out what you value and kind of
Yeah.
adjusting your money flow towards those things.
Yeah, and I don't want to minimize lack. I don't want to minimize poverty. Those those exist in our world today. They shouldn't. They don't have to. And I don't want to minimize that, but I have I have been in third world countries. We
Mhm.
we call it a third world country, all right? That expression. I've been in third world countries though where the people lack what we would consider essentials,
Mhm.
cars and homes and TVs and iPods and phones that intrinsically are happy and complete.
Mhm.
So
The people are happy and complete
they're happy
without those things.
without those, and they would say that they're not lacking.
Hmm.
So lack sometimes it's in our head.
Yeah.
It's in what we've thought that we have to have or need,
Yep.
versus real lack.
Interesting.
Yeah, and of course in the New Testament, Jesus came to fill that void, that inner void in our
Sure.
life,
Mhm.
which would bring us into abundance.
Right.
He said, matter of fact, he said, the thief comes to kill, rob, and destroy, but I've come that you might have life and have it more abundantly.
Mhm.
So he's talking about abundant life, that which was lost
Yep.
in paradise, in the garden, it was now restored
Yeah.
in our inner man, which now from there, once you begin to look at your value systems and what you value, who knows? Sky's the limit.
Absolutely. And there's ways now, especially in the country we live in, America. There's ways, and with the internet and just the connection, there's ways to creatively live without lack. So maybe your values do require more than a van and more than a, you know, a smaller level paycheck. Maybe your values are you want to create a company that changes the world. Maybe your values are you want to buy a ton of land and develop it. Maybe you want to start a farm. Maybe you want to do whatever, start a business. Maybe your values do require more money. There are a lot of opportunities to generate income now from anywhere more than they've ever been available to us. So it really goes back to the value system. And if I'm looking at, hey, the majority of my paycheck I spend on food and clothes, let's just pretend it's not true, but let's say when I was young, it was definitely true. The majority of my paycheck goes towards food and clothes. Now, the paycheck's not huge, but that is causing me to live in that cycle of I make money, I spend it all. I make money, I spend it all. I make money, I spend it all. I can never get towards my dream. And I saw this illustration of there was two ladders. One ladder had the steps. They were all really far apart from each other, but there was only 5 steps. One ladder had a ton of steps, maybe like 100 steps, but they were all really close to each other. And in the illustration, the guy with the ladder with only a few steps couldn't even reach the first step because it was so high. And in the other illustration, the guy was climbing slowly, but he was getting there. And it said the importance of taking smaller steps. And I think that applies to this situation of like the gap oftentimes between what we want and where we are sometimes seems insurmountably huge, that gives us a picture of what we're lacking because we're looking at the end goal. So how can we have goals that are huge but also know that we're not lacking along the way?
Well, some of your words, let's look at them. You pointed, you did this.
Mm-hmm.
It seems, it appears, we're thinking, we're measuring. So we're saying a goal is way up here. But if you think about it, if if you really think about that for a moment, what is the difference? Some people believe that $100 is a lot, some 1,000, some 1,000,000, some 1,000,000,000.
Yep.
So lack is a mindset.
True.
So if there's a value system in something that you desire, you focus on what you value, and I believe the resources show up to the level of belief that you have concerning your value.
And I agree with that, because the resources are already there. And when you're in a belief system, your mind carries you to them.
That's right.
It carries you to where you need to go.
Yes.
It starts to have you think of how to achieve it.
Yes. I heard where a lot of people, the cap in the salary is a lot of people have this mindset
Yeah.
of what they would like to make. And a lot of people get there. But then they stop there.
Because that was their limit.
That was their limit.
Could they have gone farther, though?
They always can go farther.
Yeah.
And you can find ways to go farther if you want to go farther. But if you feel like that's, some people, it's a 6-figure income.
Mm-hmm.
And they get to that 6-figure, and that's where they stay. And they kind of stay there. That's their set point
Right.
in their mind. But if it's more based on what you value versus just a number, then what is it going to take? What type of income is it going to take to fulfill that value?
Right.
Now you begin to believe that value is really worth living for, working for, and moving towards, and believing, most important, believing for. And like you said, I believe the resources are there. Obviously, people have the resources, right?
Yep.
All over the world. So the resources are there. We just haven't figured out a way for them to come to us. But I believe the way they come to us is through the belief system.
Yep, it's true.
Of what we are valuing and what we say we're going to go after.
That's gold. So you might now be like, maybe I don't want to break my back for a Corvette. Maybe I don't have to work as hard for that car, because maybe that car was a value that was placed in my mind that wasn't actually my value. Maybe it was a value that was placed in my mind by clever advertising and status and all those different things. Maybe my value is having my own business, having freedom, retiring early, different things like that. And maybe I'm just fine driving the car that I have right now. It's getting me from A to B, and I'm getting to enjoy my life a whole lot more. So I think that's kind of the synopsis of what you're getting at with this lack versus no lack, is basically you already are there, kind of. You're already in a no lack zone. Now there's poverty, and you mentioned not to minimize that, because that's a societal issue that is rampant in every single country. But you also mentioned there doesn't have to be poverty.
No, oftentimes, especially in some of the countries you look at around the world, it's because of greed.
Oh yes, yep.
Greed and dominance, and so which is a value system in and of itself that disregards humanity, disregards.
It's a selfish value.
It's a selfish value, because it says there's a limited amount of resources, and I'm going to take them for myself, instead of there's enough for everyone.
Yeah. Wow. That's powerful. That's powerful.
We limit so much with numbers and figures, where the abundance of God that was instilled in our hearts and created in us in the garden, it's endless.
It is.
It's endless. And there's a scripture that says, no eye has seen, no ear has heard, no mind has conceived what God has for us. I mean, we can't even imagine all of the riches that are available. So the resources are there. It's just, do we believe that there's enough for us and everyone around us?
Yeah, there is. And with that, we challenge you to consider, what do you value? We also know that the listeners of this show do consider those around them to be valuable, and they don't want to live in a society where anyone's lacking. And thinking of maybe that's part of your value system. Maybe part of your value system is you want so much resources, not just for you, but for others, so that others don't have to lack and poverty doesn't have to be as rampant in your community, society. But yeah, we challenge you to think of, are your values in alignment with your spending, or is your spending driving you to do things that you don't even value, that are in turn robbing your values and making you perceive lack when in reality, lack doesn't exist. With that, we thank you so much for joining us on this episode of 5 Ideas, and we will see you in the next one.